Well, welcome back to the Local Church Podcast. We are so excited to be with all of you today. We are having our tea this evening as we share some of the updates of the local church and what's been going on this week. We've had it's like one of those weeks where it's like been full, but you look back on the week and you're like, what exactly did we do this week? There's one really big thing, which we're excited to tell you about. But so we just wanted to share some of the updates. I know last week we talked about having the opportunity to do the trail cleanup, which was amazing and so fun to have people kind of come alongside us. And the big thing this week was we got to participate with a community event. So there's an event in the town we live in, which is borders the city that the church building is in Overland Park. So we live in Olathe, and downtown Olathe does something called Fourth Fridays in the summertime. So it's just like music and family stuff, food trucks, pop-up like market. What's the word I'm looking for?
Pop-up tents.
Well, yeah, but what's a market you go to that's always in tents, fresh food, parking lots, farmer's market. It's kind of farmer's market vibe. Were you not tracking?
Right. I just couldn't come up with.
You couldn't
come
with. Okay, cool. I'm not the only one. Okay, cool. So Market Vibe. So we got to provide face painting for the event. So we were the second tent that had face painting. Why are you laughing there, Giggles?
Well, okay. So here's what happened. We were just told hey, we had 2 face painters last year at this event, and the line was super long. Would you guys provide another one by the city? So we were like, yeah, sure. The city asked us to do, we would love to participate in doing this. So really cool thing. One of our close friends and her daughters came to help with this event. Her 2 teen daughters practiced.
From out of state.
They came from Arkansas to come over here to help us with this, which was just so cool and encouraging. So they drove over and had practiced everything, and we were getting set up. And it was as we were walking up, this lady from the chamber comes up and she goes, hi. And I was like, hey, where do we set up? And she was like, anywhere in this area. And I was like, okay. She goes, the other face painters are over there. And I was like, do you want us to set up by them? Because in my head, I'm really good at assuming. Okay. It's like a gift. assumed.
Humans are that.
Oh, okay.
Our humans do that. Yeah.
Okay.
At least I feel like
maybe
people assume all the time.
But,
yeah.
So I assumed they wanted all the face painters close to each other. That was not the case. They just really didn't care. They're like, well, this whole area is the kids' area. Just set up somewhere. So it was these really professional face painters, as in it's what they do. Everything matched. There was these big stands and tons of paints and big chairs. It was a studio. It was a studio. It was a studio set up
portable
outside.
studio. Yeah.
And then there was this parents as teachers tent, and then us. And at this point I was like, oh no, I didn't bring a sign. I didn't bring anything because I just thought it would be face painters are here. So
and I don't even think the face painting tent had a face painting.
No, but I think everyone
either.
knew who they were because they had been there before.
Yeah.
The only reason I'm telling this story is because I was laughing. So minutes, they open up, and within minutes there was several people in line.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there under our tent that just says the local church. And I guess I just assumed no one would just mosey over there for no reason. So all I wanted to do was go steal kids out of the back of the other line and be
goodness.
hey, you guys, I know where you can get your face painted.
This sounds like the tattoo artist in the street alley. He's like, yo.
But that's why I was laughing.
I can hook you up. I know somebody, okay? Just come with me.
I'm standing at the front of our tent looking at the other tent I can't do that. It will look so shady.
It would. But especially if you took candy. It'd be so bad.
I know. Well, that.
It'd be so bad.
It was more too guys, it was so hot.
Oh my
It was
goodness.
so hot.
The humidity
So
was
part
rough.
of me was I just kind of want to rescue half the people out of that line so they're not waiting so long.
Yeah.
So it was just taking a while to get people to where we were. And to the point these little girls who were super friendly came up to our tent before everything started. And
their family was sitting kind of behind the tent for the live music.
And they were
section.
4.
Yeah.
So cute and tiny. And they were looking through the face painting we offered, and they literally no, thanks, we're going to go to the other tent. It's people know who this studio is. So I really felt like I could not go over there and be like, hey, I know, wink, wink, where you can get some face painting done. So we did end up like painting several faces by the end of the night, and it was super fun. It was really cute.
There was even a small line in front of our tent.
Yeah.
Nothing I can do about it. I can't paint faces. I can't make that.
Nothing you could do about it. I didn't
like
know
I
what
couldn't
that
make
meant.
it go faster. Like I couldn't do anything. Yeah.
But even then, like we had 2, sometimes 3 people painting at a time, and it was just sweet to be able to like offer a space for, like, there were a lot of little kids who didn't want their face painted, but they wanted like their hand painted and that kind of thing. But I think it was just sweet to like be present.
For sure.
But can I just start talking about the things? Okay.
Yeah.
So part of like, I guess what I wanted to be able to do with this podcast was to just kind of talk through like the inside things I was wrestling with and all of this, because it's really real. Like when you feel called by God to do something and you love him and want to honor him and obey him, that is like your heart. But then your flesh is right there too. So I just feel like this whole week I was really battling between the spirit and the flesh. Like the spirit part of me being like, I just want to be present and love people well, and like putting on this mantra in me that was like, if I wasn't representing the local church, I would totally go and do this. Like still. So why do I feel weird putting on our local church stuff to go do it? So I was wrestling through like the marketing part.
Is it because you don't like the local church? Is that why?
Yeah, this is where I wanted to tell you that was on this podcast. No, and I think that's what weirds me out. I was like, I totally believe in what we're doing, but I am also very aware of other people.
Yeah.
And emotively aware of other people. And that a lot of people's emotions are swayed by manipulation. And I don't want to be that marketing manipulator. And also, I don't want to be what other people expect, in the sense of like, I expect you to market to me right now. And immediately be turned off to like the opportunity to meet Jesus in that space. I battle this all the time, not just in this season. It's just more intense in this season because we're actually the ones creating the culture with Jesus, versus being at a church before where we've been on staff and it's like, this is what we do in this ministry or this context, and it's just handed to you and you're like, okay, and you can push back or ask questions or run with things, but like we're creating it. So I have this like internal part of me. The way I put it this week was, I'm a first century church person in a 21st century body. And I don't know what to do with that, because I disagree with so many of the 21st century things that are out there. And they're not even like bad or wrong. It's just, I don't like them. I don't like social media. I don't like marketing. But here we are doing a podcast that we put on social media, and like God uses that. So I want to like acknowledge that's real and true. But there's this part of me that's kind of like icked out by it. And I think because in these platforms, there's so many algorithms happening that I don't want to try to placate to an algorithm of like, here we are. But I believe in Jesus. Yeah. And I want to put Jesus in front of people. So I think I just have this internal battle of the shoulds lately. What should I do in order to like market the local church? Because you do need people to start a church. So you have to invite people into that space. So I've already been there mentally. But this last week, I think it was just pressing on me, like, because we were getting closer to this event where you're representing the local church, and like,
well, we were like wearing t-shirts and doing it at,
and like, how do you come up all this like out of nowhere and be like, so are you interested?
Yeah.
So there was just like this thing in me that was like, how do you just be present and love people well? Also, I've not been doing super great, just like mentally. I just don't have a lot of words lately, or like mental space. So I actually felt last night that I was like, I just don't have words. Like someone at one point was like, tell me about the church. Guys, I could regurgitate forwards, backwards, and sideways our heart and passion. And in that moment, I was like, I literally felt like I had nothing. And I didn't feel panicked or anything. I was just like, in this moment, here I am. And just like wrestling through what just happened, or the gift and desire of being able to be in a moment and do it well, but the gift being we can learn from those things and like work forward, right?
Yeah.
But last night, I think I just felt this like internal turmoil of like, how do you just be fully present, loving people, bring up Jesus naturally when the Spirit leads, and at the same time not be doing that with a fleshly heart of marketing. And I don't know that our motives can ever be totally pure this side of heaven.
Yeah.
So, and I struggle with having to do everything right all the time. That's something Jesus and I are really walking through right now. But I think I just kept questioning my heart, like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And this is just a really vulnerable like example. At one point, this mom comes up and she goes, so how much is this? And I was like, the face painting? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, it's free. And she was like, really? Because I don't have cash, but I have like Venmo or credit card. And I was like, no, it's free. And she was like, oh, because usually at the other tents, like you have to pay. And I was like, really? But in that moment, full disclosure, my heart goes, oh, this is my opportunity to show how great we are by doing this for free. And never did I come to the place of saying like, oh, we're just doing this because we love people and we love Jesus and we just want to bless and serve. But we did talk about how you have to tip other people. Like that was the one that bothered me the most last night. The conversation that bothered me the most.
As in the fact you didn't.
It didn't. Yeah, I didn't go there.
Yeah.
I was like, why not?
Yeah.
While having grace with myself, like I was really tired. We had 2 little kids there in the heat who were not prepared for this event. And we weren't prepared to be doing this with our kids in the heat. Like
You
we learned
live
a
and you
lot.
learn.
We learned a lot. I feel like I did start painting hands. All night she was just like, I want to paint faces. And I just knew this was not the time.
Yeah.
But she did get to paint some hands and that was like really sweet.
Yeah.
But like at this first one, we didn't know what to expect anyway, but I really wanted our kids involved. Like I wanted them to feel like they could own this. And now realizing
Absolutely.
like they can own parts of it and other parts, like we couldn't be fully present because we kept having, like I had a little 4-year-old right around my hip like the whole time. And that felt like hard because he needed me and he was whiny because it was past his bedtime and it was hot. And yet I'm wanting to connect with people. And yet does my kid see me like getting down on someone else's level and ignoring him? So it was like this interesting battle all night last night. Like, how do I be fully present with like joy and love? And at the same time, like be doing that just because we love people and not because we're the local church. I don't even know if that makes sense. It's just like the constant battle I have right now. Am I doing this because I feel like I have to, or am I choosing to do this because I love the Lord and I want to? And that out of that comes the desire to share what we're doing. But yeah, it was this weird, like at the end of the night, I was like, oh, I didn't hand out any interest gathering. There we go. That we're having at the end of July for people to come and hear about the church. I didn't hand out one of those, but also none of those conversations felt like the time. And I think God honors that. But anyway, that was just kind of what I was wrestling through. Like I wanted to have so much fun and like it was fun, but we came into it like really, I felt stressed anyways. And then we're supposed to be we want to usher in this culture of unhurriedness. And I was like, oh, okay, now I will be unhurried. So it was just challenging to my spirit. Like, am I living this life of unhurriedness and rest where I'm not anxious and I can listen to the Spirit and do what he says, and at the same time come in like not anxious and stressed, but like surrendered. So that, I know that was like a lot of words, but it just felt like this battle all week and all night between this anxiousness of like talking to people and asking the right questions. And it was all layered under like, I really want to do the right thing. Yeah. But why is that not surrendered first to the love of Jesus and just like letting him be? Because he's already at work, you know? Yeah, so that was just a bit of what I was learning this week leading up to it and during it and afterwards. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, and I was wrestling with something extremely similar in the sense of like, I'm a big believer in like friendship evangelism, or the idea of like building relational trust first. But the thing that really struck me after the fact, like last night or this morning, that I mentioned, maybe I mentioned it to you last night when we were kind of processing a little bit. But I said it to my buddy on the phone today, was that if I'm asking someone about their life, if I'm asking them, you know, where they work or where they, you know, the area they live, whatever, what they love about living here, why not ask like, so do you believe in God? Like if I'm asking things about their life, like that is an aspect of my life that is huge, that if someone does believe, it would be a big part of their life to ask. And if they don't, well, now there's a potential open conversation there. But I think street evangelism has been done so poorly by so many, not all by any stretch, but so poorly by so many, or this idea of shoving religion, faith, God down people's throats, that like there's this adverse effect that I have to that, because I'm like, well, if people don't trust you or have a wall up, like you were mentioning, then they're not going to hear you. And so it doesn't do anything anyway. So to build trust. But I think asking the question, and then if they're like, no, but I'm not interested. Okay, cool. Let's talk about sports or whatever. Like, and just being willing to adjust. But that was something where I was really wrestling with, like, at what point do I need to just initiate the conversation? Because people probably aren't going to initiate it. I think part of what I thought going into last night, and I had the opposite feeling than Haley did, where I was super excited, and I thought we were going to hand out like 100 cards. I remember thinking yesterday, I was like, I think we're going to like pray with someone to receive Jesus. Like, I think like that conversation will come up, and then like it just never did. But because we were a church, I just assumed people would ask, and there's this, there we go, assuming again. But I just assumed people would ask questions, and as they did, we'd be able to tell them about the church plan. They'd be like, "Oh, that's so cool! Like, I've never heard of that, or what's that mean, or what stage of the process are you in?" And I had a couple people who asked about the church planning process, but those are people who like were deeply involved in their local church, and they're like, oh yeah, I've helped with a church plant before, or yeah, we've planted churches out of our church and I'm excited for you guys. So it kind of stayed there, where it was like there was excitement for us, but it wasn't like actual like interest in being a part of what we're doing. Anyways, so I just made the assumption that people, if they were curious, they would ask questions, and then letting them lead that conversation. But at what point do we have to initiate? And so just really wrestling with that tension. And like Haley said, it's really in line with the Holy Spirit of just trying to follow his voice. But there was one couple in particular where I just felt like it was a really good conversation. They're relatively new, moved to the area recently. And so it feels like it could have been an easy ask, like, do you believe in God? And then if yes, do you have a church community? If not, like, yeah, because you just moved here recently, like, would you want to have a conversation? Like, that just feels like such an easy thing. But again, we don't want to force things on people. So just really wrestling through what does that look like? What does that mean? And most people are receptive to prayer. And in the Midwest, most people are receptive to God as well. But there hasn't been a ton of like pushback when we've told people about church planning. Most of the time I've gotten like excited reactions, like, oh, that's so cool, like that's awesome to hear. So just, yeah, like Haley said, I was wrestling through some of the same thing, but then also like it was really good, but also it didn't quite meet expectations. So even navigating that, like, it wasn't what I thought, but it was still really good. It was great to be involved and to invest and pour in. And actually one of the values that we wanted to highlight, the different values of our church, one of them is fun. And I don't know, do you want to talk a little bit more about the value of fun?
Yeah, but can I reply to something you said real
sure,
quick?
yeah.
Because I just keep thinking about the question, do you believe in God? And I think something about that just feels really stark to me. Maybe because it feels really pointed, where I'm just wondering, like, what if anyone asks the question, like, do you have a faith? Where I feel like that kind of opens the door to, like, not just a yes or no, or like, what faith do you have? Where it could lead like down multiple roads of, oh, tell me about that. Or even like the ask towards community, like that new couple, like, do you have community yet? Do you have relationships here, friends? Like, how are you involved in your community, in your neighborhood, or whatever that can lead to the conversation about a church community. And not that you can't ask the question, do you believe in God? I think something about that just hits me kind of weird, where I think I would more either pointedly ask about Jesus, because I do feel like most people would say they believe in a God. And so therefore it almost like narrows the path to Jesus, or it opens it broad where you're like, so what do you believe? Like, what's your faith journey like? But I think it's just hard, because I'm a people reader. Like, I want to sit where the person is and go where they are. And a lot of times I don't sense an open door right away to just be like, so what do you believe? And maybe that's because when I'm standing under a church tent, that's what people, I think, expect me to do. And they're like, oh, like, what if someone wanted to get their kids face paint it because that's what their kid wanted, but they were just cringing in line because they didn't want someone to approach them. But at the same time, what if someone was like desperately waiting for someone to ask them to pray?
Yeah.
So I think it really is just discernment with the Spirit.
Yeah.
And not that you can't ask that question. That was just what was stirring in my mind. So in case it was helpful for anyone else, just like there are a few questions I feel like we could just be like armed with like, oh yeah, we could ask this way or go that direction. And I don't know why it feels so weird to just all of a sudden bring up Jesus, like asking about him in someone else's life, because I so naturally will talk about him in my own. But I didn't even really do that last night, and I don't exactly know why. Like I told our story a little bit, a couple of times, and said like God asked us to do this, but you're also like you're having quick conversation, right? So it's this interesting, like how do you navigate that? And I was painting a pink Spider-Man mask onto this like teenage girl at the end of the night. And she was telling me she's about to go into high school and how like, I was like, oh, are you feeling about high school? And she started answering and she just started talking about all the drama that was in middle school and whatnot. And towards the end, like, I just felt like me and these two girls were vibing. Like I was just able to ask questions. It's like we had been friends, you know? And I'm realizing, wow, as I'm verbally processing, because this came up earlier, it's so much easier for me to meet a kid or a teen at their level in those moments. And probably because I don't care what they think. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm older than you or whatever. I don't know what it is. But I just felt so like I could ask these questions. And at the end, I was like, so what have you learned about being a good friend? Like, how can you be a good friend when you're surrounded by people that aren't good friends? And that was kind of a deep question, but it felt so natural based on where the conversation went. But also, they were super open. Like, they were outgoing and, like, willing to have conversations. So it's that interesting, like, okay, I could go there because I felt like I was invited into that space. But I think that's what I'm sitting with a lot today is, like, do we only go where we think we're invited by people? Because there is an invitation into their life that's a door that they get to open. Yeah. However, there is a certain space between your door and my door where I'm invited into by Jesus because he's there. And it's like, is that invitation for me to knock on their door? You know, instead of just standing at my door like, whenever you're ready to come out, I'll be here. But like you were saying, how do you, not how, I was asking this in my head, how do we lead people in conversation instead of allowing them to lead? Not in totality, right? Like I want other people to lead the conversation, but I think you and I are so naturally bent to let people do that. Yeah. Because we don't want to force our way in that. Like, how do we help people as we lead them? Because most people today are just led naturally by what they're scrolling past or the algorithms. And like, I think we almost need the stone set in place sometime to be like, hey, let's go this way. Yeah. And when we do that, people are often willing to go that way. You know?
Well, and I think, like, I truly don't think, and maybe there's a part of me that I need to wrestle this, but I don't think that I'm afraid of offending people with the gospel or with, like, who Jesus is, because there was a lot that he said that was offensive. But what I don't want to do is stop somebody from an ability to receive it because of me, because of the way that I handled it or whatnot. And so that's where a lot of this, like, how do I, like, if they're offended by who Jesus is, like, I don't care in the sense of, like, obviously I care in the sense I want them to receive Jesus, but like, I don't care because Jesus said some offensive things. But I want to do it well, where I don't want them to shut off hearing about Jesus because of the way that I conduct myself or the way that I approach the conversation or whatever. And so that's where a lot of, I think this comes in.
Well, no, I agree. I think that's my same thing. Like, we're going to offend people with truth. But I think what I'm realizing is I placate so much to the, like, fear that I'm going to mess it up, that I don't balance that God's already there. Yeah. He's already been working and he can cover up my mistakes. So I don't want to just like never contemplate it and do whatever, but also there's a different kind of courage and invitation I can offer someone else. Like if I'm only ever waiting for an invitation for someone else, I'm never going to offer them one. Yeah. And like, what if they're waiting for that invitation? And I do think I can do that over a period of relationship, even within like an hour. Like, I feel like I can determine with the Spirit, like, what's happening. And he'll speak to me in moments. But the moment to moment conversations are harder for me to be like, I'm jumping in and jumping out real quick. But there are certain times it feels like really natural and normal. But that's usually when I feel the invitation. Like,
from
I can
them.
sense you're open to this, or you said
Yeah.
this thing. But like, yeah, it's just big life questions, I guess, we're asking, especially in this season where we're representing a church differently than we ever have been before. And someone once said, why don't we share Jesus the way we would like the best meal we ever had? Because wouldn't you tell everyone about that? And this actually came to mind last night. And as I was standing there, I was like, if I had a really good meal today, I wouldn't be telling anyone about that.
Yeah.
Like, what would I be talking about? So I asked the kids their name, like, how old are you? What do you like to do? And I have to recognize too, that is a piece of being Jesus. Like
100%.
getting
Oh,
at that
100%.
kid's level
Yeah.
and looking her in the eyes and looking him in the eyes. And there was like just a couple of sweet moments where like I met a lady from India. She's been here 9 or 10 years. And I said, what's your name? And she told me and I repeated it. And literally it was by the grace of God. I apparently said it correctly. And she was like, no one has ever said my name correctly. And I was like, whoa, like what a sweet gift. That I just had that moment to like, we didn't talk about the church at all. And right after that, I walked over to talk to someone else. And there's this thought though in me that like, maybe they'll remember the local church because I said her name. Maybe not. That's okay. But just the fact that like she felt seen in that moment, like I have to remember that he's in me and I'm in him. That's what he keeps telling me this week. Like where he goes, I go. And where I go, he is. And so like, I want to be listening, but I also want to have the grace with myself that sometimes I'm going to miss it, but I don't want to keep missing it. You know, I also don't want to be afraid of like missing it so much that that's all I'm thinking about. I just want to be present with people and just love them well and talk about what Jesus has done for me and like not feel more pressure doing that when I'm under a church tent than when I'm in my front yard. And I feel that pressure all the time if I'm honest, but it's a good question to ask myself. Like, am I feeling this responsibility more because I'm wearing a certain logo, or am I actually wearing this as a banner in my life? Like Jesus is mine and I'm his. And I don't care what anyone thinks about that, but I do want to honor the people around me, but I want to be invitational for them as well.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking earlier when you were talking about that invitation is like some people need to be invited in. Like, yeah, we're waiting for maybe them to feel like they're allowing us to like share part of their story, but they also might not feel like they can share. And so there's a little bit of that inviting in. And some of that invitation is just through questions and genuine curiosity. And I do want to say like part of this too, like some of the wrestles, because like it was good.
Yeah.
Like where just going and investing in the community was amazing. And that is Jesus. Like we served the community. We provided this for free for families as a part of it. Like it was a gift to the Chamber of Commerce to put on the event. It was a gift to the families who got their faces painted. Like it was just a gift of service. And so like there is a goodness. And so it's just causing us to wonder like, oh, it never felt like there were any of my conversations led to a place to grab one of the handouts for the interest gathering. It just never felt that way. And I like walked away like, I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay not having given away one of those. But then I just started, the thing that I've been wrestling with was, but I didn't ask about God. And if I want people to know God, why don't I ask about that without any expectation of an interest gathering or coming to our church or anything like that? So that's really where I'm wrestling with and just processing like, what does that mean and what does that look like in my own life? And part of this is if I'm completely vulnerable, which I feel like I feel a little exposed. I feel a little vulnerable on this episode, but I'm not naturally an evangelist. Like and those of you who know me know that, but that's something that's like harder for me is just to like initiate conversation and like bring up God. And again, it's because I want to build relational trust. And as we get to know each other, like we talk about our lives and have an opportunity to share. And I know the different jobs that I've worked outside of the church world, like that's come up naturally. And I really feel like for a number of people that I worked with before, like I got to be a light to them and I got to share who Jesus is and just love them as Jesus would. And so that's the way that I've kind of always operated, but just really wrestling with like, at what point do you initiate the conversation or invite them into that part of the story? So,
well, and I think the whole vulnerable piece, before you started talking, I had this thought, and then you brought up the word that like when we're vulnerable, that's an invitation for someone else to be vulnerable. And so there's that in questions too, by just like, and not just about Jesus, but like, hey, who are you? Like, why are you here? How was your day? What did you do today? What do you like to do for fun? Those spaces create the invitation to have a relationship, even for a short moment. And I've realized as I start asking people questions, they'll often ask me questions back. Like, oh, so what are you doing here? I'll ask people about their jobs. I am genuinely curious what people do. And I love finding out about jobs I didn't know existed and finding out if people like them. But because I asked that question, a lot of people will be like, what do you do? And then I can be like, oh, I'm a pastor. I'm here to plant a church or whatever. Like today, I was at Dick's Sporting Goods looking for something, and I'm just wandering around. And this man's like, suddenly asked me a question. He works there. And we ended up having a very long conversation. I ended up praying for him, gave him the information for the local church. He gave me his phone number so we could connect with him and his wife. And as I'm standing there, I'm like, this is crazy. I'm having a not deeper, but deeper, because there was, you know, just me and him, one person conversation, like connect.
And then, not talking about sporting equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then all of these like conversations I had last night, but also this man really wanted to just tell stories and ask questions. Like he was the invitation into that. And therefore I responded because he asked, and that we get to be that as well for other people. And I do realize at an event like this too, like, especially when our children who needed us were present, it was very staccatoed, like just these little blips of like, hey, I'm over here. Hey, I'm over here. Or even the management of like, we were trying to pass one face painting booklet to the next person in line so they could look. And like, so I'd be talking to someone and be like, oh, I need to go hand that. It's like your brain is really ticking through a lot of things while at the same time, like God is at the center of all of that. Like he makes it all run. So how do we keep bringing it back to just, at least in this centered part in me, this Sabbath rest in my own heart of like, he's here. He's going before me into each conversation. He's standing with each person. Like he knows their life. I don't need to. But also I want to be slow enough with him where he could tell me something, like a word for that person or a picture for that person, or can I pray with you? Like those things that I might miss if I'm just doing the thing, even if I'm trying to do it in the name of Jesus, right? And love people well, like have a good conversation. But if I just keep circling, like, when's the time? Maybe I'll miss it because I'm so concentrated on like thinking about the thought than being present with the person. So what if we just like were us and vulnerably shared and asked the question that became the invitation for the other person in front of you to engage? Because I think so many people want authentic, vulnerable relationship. But it's scary and you don't know who to trust. And so to actually be the invitation into a trusted relationship that can be an example of Jesus is just like really powerful. And bringing levity. So bringing it back to fun. Last night I was just finding it fun to ask like random people, random questions that would just like make them smile. And most of it was really honestly like quite dumb. Like adults, full grown adults. And I'm like, would you like your whole face painted? And I would go to them before their child and they would look at me and I'm like, tiger? Like, and then they would catch on to like, oh, she's like being funny. But it just brought this levity of like, I'm not here to just be like the person moving the line through or to come ask you if you believe in Jesus so I can baptize you. But like engaging with each person in a way that brings levity, with just like, it's hot. Let's have some fun. Do you need a water bottle? How long have you been waiting today? Well, we've been to 2 different places with face painting today. My daughter, we were almost to the car and she was like, hey, you told me I could get my face painted. So we're back. And like parents just being good parents and being able to encourage them in that. Like, wow, that's so cool that you came. You know, like just this fun that can be in just like being present with people that I do feel like can be stolen when I'm circling myself and like, oh my gosh, rather than just being present, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are we going to have to circle back to fun another time?
Yes.
Is this long? I don't pay attention to time.
Yeah. So Before we pray, though, we're not going to have an episode next week. This is coming in July 4th weekend. We got some things going on, family coming in town, stuff like that. So there will not be a new episode next Tuesday, but the following Tuesday we'll release another episode. But do you want to pray for us as we end our time?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. God, thank you that you are love. You are present with us, that you are in us, and we are in you as your children, and that wherever we go, you go with us, and wherever we go, you're already there. You are the invitation into each moment. You're the invitation to be present in this life. So God, for anyone who's wondering what they're here for, what their purpose is, or is there even a point, would you remind them that there is, because you're here, and you're their invitation into the space where you've put them. For anyone who's wrestling through, I think about just sharing faith or sharing vulnerably, would you fill them with courage, God, the ability to be vulnerable in healthy, boundaried ways and authentic with people around them, to be the one to ask questions. For people who have been hurt or broken, God, in authentic relationships that felt really real, I just pray for healing there and for new friendships and for restoration, God, in relationships that are broken or that have changed. Thank you that you're our constant. Thank you that you see what each of us needs. And I just pray, God, that we would sit unhurried with you and allow you to pour into us. And in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for listening to the Local Church Podcast, and we look forward to sharing some more as we continue to progress through the summer and see what God continues to do. Have a great night.
Bye.